Alright, so this you do not actually have notes that match up for in your book. The book jumps right into area of composite figures because it knows that you learned last year how to find the area of a parallelogram and a triangle and a trapezoid, but I'm sure a lot of you have forgotten that by now, so we're going to revisit that idea before you get into lesson 3. So please make sure you're watching this video first, otherwise the next lesson is really not going to make sense. Okay? So the first thing is I want you to make sure you have a piece of paper out to be writing some of these formulas down or take any notes that you want as you go through this, because these notes will be very helpful as you go to do the Desmos activity. Okay, just like I always have people ask me when we're actually in school, can we use the notes to help us on the homework? Yes, that's what they're exactly for. Okay, so as you're taking notes now, use these when you do your Desmos activities. I promise they will help you out. Okay, so the first formula is for a parallelogram, and the formula is A equals BH. Okay, and it's important that you know what these mean. A, capital A, we always use capital A for area, B is always base, and H is always height. Okay, and this rectangle is actually considered a parallelogram, okay, because there's two pairs of parallel sides. This side and that side are parallel, and this side and this side are parallel. They will never touch. That's what parallel means. Okay? They're also equal to each other. If I said this was 2 centimeters, this would be 2 centimeters. Okay? So normally with a rectangle you might think length times width. That's the same thing. We're just calling it different names here, because when we talk about different shapes, we're going to keep using that base and height, and sometimes length and width just didn't really seem to fit. Okay, so that's your first formula. The second one, triangle, A equals 1/2 base times height. So it's very similar. The reason why is it has the 1/2 in there is if you look at this rectangle or this parallelogram, if you cut it in half, notice you get a triangle there. Okay, so a triangle is half of a parallelogram. You take the base times the height and you cut it in half for that triangle. Okay, the trapezoid is the tricky one. So on a trapezoid, it's A equals 1/2. You have to use parentheses. And this is base 1. This is called a subscript here. It's a little 1 underneath, plus base 2, and those have to be in parentheses. You have to do that adding first, okay, times the height. So it's the same as this one, except now we have two bases that we have to add together. 1/2, the bases, and the height. Okay, so we just kind of added one thing on in each of these. So we're going to do some practice problems. The first thing is, hopefully you know what these are. Okay, these are parallelograms. So we're finding the area of a parallelogram. Alright, they kind of look like they're rectangles that have just kind of been smushed on its side here. Again, they have two sets of parallel lines that are congruent, so they are equal to each other. Now, I am going to tell you this every single time we do anything in this chapter. You always want to start by writing out your formula. And you want to do that because your formula tells you what to do. Okay, so our formula for parallelograms that I wrote up above is A equals BH. Okay, A equals BH. So we have our area. We don't know what the area is. We're trying to find that. That's why this stays in A. Okay? We do know our base. I know it might not look like we know what this is because it doesn't tell us, but remember, the opposite side is exactly the same. So we know our base is 10. Now the height is kind of tricky, okay? You actually have two different heights on this problem. You have this height and then you have this height. So you have to decide, okay, which one are we supposed to be using? Well, the height that you want is always going to be perpendicular to the base. If you don't remember what that means they meet at a right angle. So we're going to be using that 5. So the height and the base always have to be meeting like that. Okay? They have to meet at a right angle, at a 90-degree angle. What this is called, the 6 inches here, is the slant height. Okay? And that can be used to find different things, but not using that for the area. Okay, that's just added information. They're trying to confuse you in this problem by giving you extra information that you don't need. So from there, you just multiply them together. Base, height, base times height. Okay, so we have 10 times 5 is 50. And it tells us it's inches, and area always is squared. So remember, you could write the word out if you want, but I find it easiest just to put the little 2 there. When you go to do the work in Desmos, remember, you don't ever have to put a label, you don't ever have to put the squared. Okay, you just put the number in. So I want you to answer this one on your own. Remember, start off with the formula. A equals base times height, or area equals base times height. Try plugging in each part that you know. You don't know the area right now, that's what we're looking for. So go ahead and try that one. So on this one, what you would do is you have your area, you have your base. That base is 15. You have your height. Remember, you want your height to be perpendicular. So I'm not going to use this. This is the slant height. We're going to use perpendicular to the base. Look for that right angle there. So we're going to use 5. And 15 times 5 is 75. So we know our area is 75 centimeters squared. That should be your answer on that one. So parallelogram should be easy. It's just taking the 2 numbers, the base and the height, and multiplying them together. The next one is our triangles. Okay. Again, the base and the height have to be perpendicular. So notice you're seeing a lot of right angles there because that's how we know which one is the base and the height together. If they would have given me the dimension over here, we wouldn't be using that. That would be our slant height. So just like before, start with your formula. And if you don't remember, area of a triangle, that's half of a parallelogram. So 1/2 times base times height. Now when I'm typing it into a calculator, you can type 1/2, but a lot of times I do 0.5 just in case I'm using a calculator that can't do fractions. Remember, 1/2 is the same thing as 0.5. Right there, you can see it in the calculator. Okay. So our base on this one is 4. Our height is 6. And I think a lot of you think you can't do this without a calculator, but you really can, because all you're really doing is 4 times 6 is 24, and you're taking half of that. Half of 24, that's 12. And it's centimeters squared since it's area. In case you don't believe me, there's your 12. Next one, again, always write your formula out. I don't care that I have it right here. Guys, I already have these notes worked out for this chapter and for this lesson. And if you notice, I write it out every single time. Okay? So I'm not just telling you to do that. I do it myself. It helps me as well. And the other thing is, when you go to do your Desmos, it's really important that you're showing me this. because if you don't show me this in that sketch or in the picture off to the side, usually it's on the left, I don't know how to help you from there. Okay, so make sure you're showing me work so that I can tell you, oh, okay, you were supposed to use the 5 when you accidentally use the slant height instead, or something like that. Okay, so we have our 0.5 times our base is 4 and our height is 3. Now, what if it would have looked like this instead, and I used this as my base and this is my height? Does that matter? No, it doesn't, because 3 times 4 is the same thing as 4 times 3. So it really doesn't matter which one was the base and the height, as long as you're going with where they meet at a perpendicular angle. Okay? And when you multiply those together, again, if you think about it in your head, 4 times 3 is 12, half of 12 is 6, so 6 centimeters squared. Go ahead and try the last one. I know it kind of looks tricky, but I think you can do it. On this one, we have our 1/2. We have our base, and remember, you have to do it at a right angle. This would technically be a slant height, okay? So you have to go, what is the measurement from where the base is all the way up to the top of the point there? So that is really your height. I know that it looks funny because it's outside of this actual triangle, which this triangle is what you are solving for here, but that would be the height there. Okay? So we have 0.5 times 14 times 10, and it would be 70. And again, I'm sure some of you were able to do that in your head. Area is always squared, so take the label and put the squared. Now notice, in all of these, we left the A here because that's what we're trying to solve for. We want to keep the A there since we don't know what it is. That's what we're looking for. The next one, area. So area of A, and if you didn't realize what this was, it is a trapezoid. Okay? Has 4 sides like a parallelogram. The difference between a trapezoid and a parallelogram is that a parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel sides, where a trapezoid only has 1 set of parallel lines. Parallel line, these two will not. So they extend, they will meet. Okay, same thing here. Parallel, these would meet eventually. Okay? The parallel lines of a trapezoid are really important because that tells you which ones are the bases. Remember, our formula is A equals 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So when I go to do this, I again usually use 0.5. If you prefer typing 1/2 in because the Desmos calculators have fraction features, that's fine with me. So the bases are the ones that are parallel. So look for the 2 lines that won't touch, and those are your bases. Doesn't matter which one you pick as the first one and the second one, because 6 plus 8 is the same thing as 8 plus 6. And then we have 4 different numbers that could be the height. We have 7, we have 4, and we have 5. Remember, the base and the height always have to meet at a perpendicular angle. So you're always going to be looking for that right angle, that box there. Since this is where my box is, okay, that's going to be 4. We don't use the 7, we don't use the 5. They're trying to trick you there. They're trying to give you more information than you need. All right? Now, if you're trying to do this in your head, you want to make sure you add this up first. And then think your 14 times 4 and half of that. Okay? Otherwise, when you are typing it in your calculator As long as you use the parentheses, you will be good. If you don't use the parentheses, it is not going to come out the correct answer. And if you notice, 0.5 times 6 plus 8 times 4, it's different because I didn't use the parentheses. So make sure you're putting those parentheses in there. Or add it up first and then just multiply all three together. Now, this one doesn't have a label on it. Anybody know what you would use for that? Hopefully you knew it was units. So it'd be units squared. Go ahead and try the next trapezoid on your own. So on this one, you always start with your formula. Okay, and we're looking for the area, so that stays A, and you're plugging in the rest of the information that you know. Remember, your bases are the parallel lines, the lines that will never meet. Your height is where that box is because it's a perpendicular angle. It's a right angle. So we don't use the 5 here. And I end up with my area is 26 meters squared. Okay? Now, all of those we are finding the area. It works a little differently if you're working backwards, kind of, I guess is a sense, where you're given your area and you need to find a measurement from this shape. Okay, so the first thing that you have to do is you have to be able to identify the shape. So think about this. Is this a triangle? Is this a parallelogram? Is this a trapezoid? Hopefully you realized it was a trapezoid, so you have to use that formula for a trapezoid. Always write this out because it tells you what to do. Okay, it's important to know which formula to use because if I wrote A equals BH, I'm going to get the wrong answer because we don't just take the base times the height. Okay? So this is different because they gave me the area this time. So I plug that in for A. I know 1/2. I know both of my bases. I know this one is 3, and I know this one is 2. What I don't know is my height right here. I'm going to keep that as H since we don't know what it is. So to solve, what you would need to do on this one is you need to simplify this side. Okay? So I'm going to take my 0.5 and in parentheses 3 plus 2, and I see that that is equal to 2.5, and the H stays there. All I did was I took this part right here and I simplified it. Now I have a one-step equation. You guys are all really good at this. You do your railroad tracks to separate the two sides. To get rid of the coefficient, you divide by 2.5. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So 3.75 divided by 2.5. I end up finding that my height would be 1.5, and since there's no label, it's units. Okay? This next one is a triangle. I think the triangle formula is easier to do, so I'm going to have you go ahead and try this one. Remember, this is your formula. A equals 1/2 base times height. They gave you your area. They gave you this number for the base. You're looking for the height. Go ahead and try that one on your own. So I have my area. Oh, I'm sorry. Started that one out wrong. So I have my area. I know what it is. I know 1/2. I know my base here. What I don't know is my height again. I have to find that height. So since I don't know, I leave it as that variable there. once again, simplify this side. Half of 18, or 1/2, 0.5 times 18, that's going to be 9. Keep your h, and it's 108 still on that side. We didn't do anything there yet. Now it's a one-step equation. Your railroad tracks, divide by the coefficient on both sides, and you end up with h is equal to 12. And it is centimeters. So in this one, your height ends up being 12 centimeters. Okay, so the formulas are so important in this chapter, guys. So normally I have you actually do a quiz in class with the formulas, but right now I just want to see what you can remember. So don't look at your notes, okay? Get a separate piece of paper really quick, or flip it over to the back of your notes where you can't see them, and try to write down the formulas for each one. See if you can do that. Do the best you can. If you can't get it, it's okay, but just try your best. So we're going to go through those. Okay. So area of a triangle, A equals 1/2 base times height. Circumference, C equals pi times diameter. Now I know that we talked about in the video C equals 2 pi r. I will tell you guys, I never use that one, because if they give me the radius, I just think, okay, radius is half of the circle, and I need the diameter, I need all the way across the circle, so I just multiply it by 2 in my head, and I don't even worry about this. Why try to remember 2 formulas when you can only think about 1 in your head? Okay. Area of a parallelogram, A equals 1/2. You need the parentheses because there's 2 bases. Add base 1 and base 2 together, multiply by your height. Area of a semicircle. So remember your formula for a circle, I'm going to jump down here, circle is pi r squared. If you don't remember the circumference and the area of a circle, the two with circles, circumference is the distance around the outside of the circle, like perimeter. Area of the circle is the space that it takes up on the inside. Okay. So that was chocolate pies delicious and apple pies are too. That only works if there is the pi in it. And there's only going to be the pi symbol if it's dealing with circles. If it's any other shape, don't use pi. Pi won't be in there. Okay? So it's, remember, the exact same, I don't know why I put the equal sign way over there, but it's the exact same as the area of a circle. It's just, it's half of it. Half of the area of a circle. And the last one, oh my, I can't believe I switched those around. I really wasn't paying attention. And we're at the end of the video, so I am not going to try to re-video this. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm doing this video at about 11 o'clock at night, so sorry about my mistake here. Parallelogram. Parallelogram is this one, not this one. That's trapezoid. Okay? So go ahead and check and see how many of those you got right. Make sure you watch to the end of the video. I have a question for you about whether you understood everything. And don't forget to look back at these notes when you're trying to do your Desmos, or look at the document that has all of my extra clips on there for each type of Desmos question.